Okay, this is my retro review of Robocop, the 1987 film. This was a movie that I saw in the theaters when I was 12 years old. My dad took me and my brother to go see it, and I think he thought it was more along the lines of like a fantasy Star Wars kind of thing. But director Paul Verhoeven had something else in store for all of us involved. Graphic violence, graphic language, really violent. I mean, this movie was just like so over the top, but also had some popcorny, sweet moments in the film. Just to give you a breakdown of the movie, if you haven't seen the original RoboCop, it takes place in a different time in Detroit, and basically there's a cop by the name of Alex Murphy who is transferred in from an upper crust neighborhood because he wants to make a difference. There's not a lot of action down there, so he decides he wants to go to the slums and make a difference in a police department there. He's partnered up with Officer Lewis, played by Nancy Allen, and they are partnered up and ready to go hit the streets. And meanwhile, while they're solving these little capers and crimes, there is a huge conglomerate corporation, Omni Consumer Products, OCP. And they have literally taken over the city because they're going to rebuild on top of old Detroit a new city called Delta City. And so what they've done is they've seized control over all the assets of the city, including taking over the police force. And so they're kind of union busting. You know, it's funny because a lot of the themes in 1987 are predicting a lot of what is going on in our current political climate with corporations taking over and union busting and things like that. So there's a lot of really cool moral issues that go on in this film. But as a 12-year-old, I didn't see that. I didn't get that until I got older and realized all the significance of what the movie was trying to portray. Well, this OCP decides with their CEOs that they want to phase out human police officers and put out autonomous robots that will secure the area. This way, they can get military contracts for these things and also get rid of paying for the high cost of insurance and stuff for police officers and things of that nature. So. But the first robot that comes online is called Ed 209, and Ronnie Cox, who plays the vice president for Omni Consumer Products, Dick Jones, has really pushing this. This was his pet project, and but it fails. It fails tragically when they were doing a robot demo test of a basic disarmament. It guns down one of the other executives in a massively bloody massacre. And so the backup plan is headed up by a character named Bob Morton, who is played by Miguel Ferrara, the late Miguel Ferrara. And his character has the backup plan to the Ed 209, which is the Robocop program, which basically takes not going fully autonomous, but incorporating living tissue, a cyborg, and what they need is basically in order to do this backup plan to the Ed 209, because they were going to have to furlough that project. Bob Morton steps up and pushes the RoboCop program, and the head of OCP, who's above Dick Jones, gives him the green light, 6 weeks to produce a prototype. And so now they just need some dumb schmuck, according to Bob Morton, to volunteer, which means they need a police officer. Any of the police officers that signed over to be police officers also waive their rights for their bodies. Basically, they're owned by Omni Consumer Products to do what they want with. So there is a cop killer out on the streets named Clarence Boddicker, played brilliantly by Kurtwood Smith. It was like one of the first times I'd ever seen that actor, and he played Clarence Boddicker to a T. I mean, this guy, he was like a new Darth Vader in a human form. Not that Darth Vader wasn't in human form, but my point is, it's like for this genre, this guy was the nastiest, most sinister villain you could possibly imagine. And Kurtwood Smith just played it so well. And to this day, it still is one of my favorite performances. Now, a lot of people might know him as the father on that '70s show, but he'll always be Clarence Boddicker to me. Kurtwood Smith, dude, you rock. So he is this nasty street gang leader that is known for killing cops. And so they're robbing a bank, and they've got all this money, and they're driving down the road. And of course, Officer Lewis and Officer Murphy get the call to intercept. And when they do, basically they come to a head in a steel mill, and they're caught with their pants down. And the gang corner Detective Murphy, or Officer Murphy, and they gun him down in cold-blooded murder. And I mean, they shoot his hand off. He turns around, 4 guys with shotguns start blowing him to pieces. And then, of course, the kill shot, Clarence Boddicker shoots him right in the head. Now, they did put out a Criterion edition of RoboCop, and there was also a director's cut, which was super, super violent, which added an extra maybe 60 seconds to the scene where all the guys with the shotguns are just destroying the Murphy character. His arm falls off at the shoulder after his hand is shot off. He's just shot up so many times. It feels like the scene goes on and on and on and on. But you know what? It didn't go on that long, but it just felt like it was going on that long. I mean, they massacred this guy. So, of course, he gets airlifted to the hospital. They can't save him. Fade to black, because it's all through POV of his eyes as he's having flashbacks of his family, his wife, and his kids, and all that stuff. And when he wakes up and comes to, he is the cyborg RoboCop. They took his head and his torso, and they created a massive amount of armor around him that was, could withstand small arms fire. And he's programmed with all the accuracy of shooting and the whole 9 yards. And he becomes this prototype that Bob Morton releases onto the street, and he starts cleaning up the town. This movie was amazing, ahead of its time, and it was hell to make, from what I understand. I've seen some interviews with Peter Weller talking about the suit and how the suit didn't work, and in the second day of filming, they almost pulled the plug on the movie. And they brought in this pantomime guy that had to redo the suit and cut off pieces, and they came up with, because RoboCop was supposed to have this fluid Tai Chi kind of motion when he shot and fired and did things, but they couldn't do that, so it wound up being this Robo kind of way of how he walked and talked and everything was very slow and dramatic, like a robot, like that. And so, anyway, make a long story short, it was hell to make this movie, but it really blew up when it came out. I think it made $52 million at the box office back in 1997, just domestically, and it launched a franchise of several movies after that. The reason I'm talking about this movie right now and why I picked RoboCop was because a couple of weeks ago, Neil Blomkamp, who did Chappie and he did District 9, was given the green light to do a direct sequel to the original RoboCop from 1987, and he got the original writers to come back, and they had written the script a while ago, and he's taken this thing on, and it has really got me jazzed. They're even going to try to bring Peter Weller on board to play RoboCop. I think it's tentatively titled RoboCop Returns, and I am so stoked about it. They had an opportunity back in 2013, and then it was released in 2014, the reboot of RoboCop. I can't figure out why that movie, I didn't really like it so much because I think it missed the boat on the satire and the fun of the first film. It's crazy because it had Gary Oldman was in it, Jackie Earle Haley, Samuel Jackson, Michael Keaton played the head of OCP, and Joel Kinnaman played RoboCop. So you had like an amazing all-star cast, but for whatever reason, the movie was completely flat. And one of the reasons I feel it was flat was because they did use a lot of CGI to make RoboCop, and it just he looked more sleek. He looked more like a Porsche rather than a tank. And they made them all black, which I thought was kind of like when Joel Kinnaman was in the RoboCop suit when they were first training him and he was getting used to his body. He had the same paint scheme as the original RoboCop, but then Michael Keaton was like, "How about we just make them all black?" And then he comes out with this full black outfit and a red stripe like Knight Rider on the front, and it just didn't do well at the box office. It did well overseas. It didn't do well domestically, and as far as reboots goes, it was a failure, which I think is why they're going back to the well. Now, they did do a couple of RoboCop sequels. They did RoboCop 2, which was directed by Ivan Kershner, who directed The Empire Strikes Back, and it was probably one of the best sequels that was made to a franchise. RoboCop 2 is really good. RoboCop 3, I have to say, was the first movie in cinematic history in my life that I ever walked out of. I literally got up and walked out of the movie about 10 minutes in. And later I saw it on VHS, or maybe it was HBO or something years ago later, and it was awful. And I just remember shaking my head going, this is such a terrible movie. And I feel bad because Robert Burke, who played RoboCop in that film, is a really good actor, and you've seen him in tons of stuff. And I thought, he was going to have a great opportunity to do something with it, but they made it so campy, and he fought a ninja in it, and it was just so bad. And so I would say the first RoboCop and RoboCop 2 was a great sequel. Everything they've put out since then has been just mediocre. They did do RoboCop, a TV series that came out for quite a few years, and it was shot up in Canada. And they did do a couple of made-for-TV movies based on the RoboCop franchise as well, prior to this reboot with the all-black suit with Joel Kinnaman. So the fact that they're making another RoboCop is just going to be so badass, and I hope Peter Weller does come back to take on the role. A few years back, I worked on all 3 seasons of Under the Dome, which was a Stephen King series, and one day I didn't see the call sheet, and I was working with the set decorators. I was driving the set decorators, so we were always working on next day's work, so I never had a chance to get on set much when they were filming because we were always working on next day's work. So one day I was out driving and I saw in the parking lot some guy playing a trumpet with a scarf around his neck, and I just drove by him and I was like, why is there a guy in the studio parking lot playing a trumpet? It was some sort of trumpet, clarinet. And I was like, this is so weird. And I went in and to the production office and I was like, who's out in the parking lot playing the trumpet? They were like, it's Peter Weller. He's directing the next episode. And I was like, what? So I looked at the call sheet and I was like, holy shit. Peter Weller was directing the next episode. And he's directed a lot of television, Sons of Anarchy, and to name one. And, he's made his living at doing this. He still acts from time to time. He was in Star Trek, one of the Star Trek films as a villain. And the thing is, like, they could, after seeing him in person, and what was funny was then I started looking at everyone's social media while I was working on Under the Dome, and all the crew members started posting pictures of themselves with Peter Weller. He would take pictures with him in between breaks. And I was like, what the hell? And because I was never on set, I didn't get a chance to take a picture with Peter Weller. But I was in the production office one day, and the production coordinator, Noelle, who's a good friend of mine, she said, hey, Shaun, I want you to meet a friend of mine. And I turned around and it was Peter Weller. And she said, Peter, I want you to meet Shaun. And we started talking and had a conversation, a very brief conversation, but it was so nice to talk to Peter Weller and actually get to meet him. I didn't get to take a picture with him. But the thing is, like, I understand why he was reprehensible about coming back to do a third RoboCop film. Not only was the script just horrendous, but just wearing that suit was such a pain in the ass. And one year I had a friend of mine who was a prop collector, and he had purchased a RoboCop suit. And it was like 90 pounds of fiberglass. And I was the right height and build and everything. And I said, hey, listen, can I take it out for Halloween one day? And we did a fitting and it worked fine. And I actually went out as RoboCop for Halloween. And we're going to pop the picture up right here of me as RoboCop. And it was really fun to walk around in the suit, but you really didn't have a lot of mobility. You couldn't move very much at all. Horrendous. So I totally understood where he was coming from, is like, it's just so hard to do anything in that suit. But I got a lot of applause as I walked around downtown. The police officers that were patrolling the downtown area where I live, where they were having the street was blocked off and everybody was walking around in costumes. They saw the RoboCop and they were hitting the police lights and giving a little blip blip blip, you know, with their sirens and everything. And I was doing the moves. I was doing it. Like I really was focused and worked hard to make sure I looked like RoboCop the whole time. And I came in second place at a costume contest. Which was pretty cool too. But what I was thinking was, you know, I looked at the evolution of the Iron Man films and how Robert Downey Jr. in the first film, they built a suit for him, but it was so hard for him to move around in it. But then as all the Avenger movies and everything, and Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 and everything, all the way up until the newest Iron Man, literally all they do is like put a helmet on him, and the rest from the neck down is all CGI, and he's wearing a suit with the dots on it. And I thought, Peter Weller can totally come back, even though he's aged, because you only see his face anyway as RoboCop. He could totally come back and do a CGI suit from the bottom down. I'm not a big fan of CGI. I've always said it in all my videos. But when you do robotics and spaceships, CGI looks great. When you try to do skin textures and things like that, sometimes it doesn't look as good. Like in Black Panther, the last battle between Killmonger and Black Panther, when they were fighting each other, they just look like rubber CGI. They just look real rubbery, and it kind of pulled me out of their fight sequences because it wasn't guys in suits. And but robots, they seem to get right. So I really feel like this is going to work out great. If they do this new RoboCop film and Peter Weller does sign on to do this film, and it's a cash grab for him, he should just do it and then tell him, I want, just like Robert Downey Jr. from the neck down, make the suit, you know, CGI, and do it that way. And I think he should do the film, and I think it'll be really cool. It'll be really good to see him back in. Okay, so don't take my word for it. Go stream it, go download it from Amazon Prime. Watch the original 1987 RoboCop and just have a really good time with it. I wouldn't recommend it for small kids because it is ultra violent. It's a Paul Verhoeven film. If you've seen the original Total Recall or you've seen Starship Troopers, you get the kind of violence that is in these films. So be cautious with that. But it's just nice to revisit the movie as well, and to know that there's hope that another one is coming out, and they're going to bring back Peter Weller's RoboCop. So anyway, that's my little throwback retro review of RoboCop and my insight into a couple little things and some stories that I wanted to share. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Leave comments below if you have any questions about anything. Subscribe to my channel and share this video.